So what did you study?
I studied psych and economics.
And so there was a lot of stat underlying both of those.
A lot of stat underlying both of those. I started just psychology, and then I was like, this isn't applicable anywhere. Like, it's fun. I loved psych classes because it was all just like, this study says that humans are dumb, and this study says that humans are dumb, but in this way. And you're like, wow, humans are dumb. This is great.
Humans are dumb.
So at first I tried to pair it with computer science, like programming, do like human design, like human factors, psychology.
The most human and the least human thing.
Yes, exactly. It was like, how do we design an app? Like, I helped design an app for Chrysler to show people where like charging stations would be if they had an electronic vehicle. And then I learned that coding fucking sucks. So I flipped over to economics because I was like, all right, math at least, like, I understand.
Did you enjoy coding? Was there ever like a high? Okay.
No, I hated it. I absolutely, it's coding. I feel like I'm a fairly like, I'm getting to be more confident. There's one thing in my life where I'm like, I could never figure that out, and it's coding.
Really?
The only thing in my life where I like, no matter how many hours I put into this, I will never be able to figure this out, and it's coding. I don't know.
I find math very adjacent to coding in terms of like the parts of my brain it lights up, and I find coding very similar to comedy, to writing jokes, because it's a lot of work, a lot of tedious, frustrating work where you're sure you're right, and then you are proven wrong.
Yep.
And then when it clicks, that there's that jump out of your chair moment. There's that I am invincible kind of, Boris from GoldenEye.
Yeah.
And those things, I've seen that there's a ton of overlap between math and coding. Like, my favorite mathematician on YouTube is a guy named Grant Sanderson. He does 3 Blue 1 Brown, and he
3 Blue 1 Brown.
Yes.
Okay.
Best thing on the internet. In my opinion. It's just math videos. It's just he does interesting problems and kind of visualizes them in a way that hasn't been done yet. I could go into this, but like what we're dealing with is math education. Wherever math is, as a I'm not smart enough to understand where we are with math versus where we should be, or if we're ahead. I do understand that math education is something that's gravely behind right now. I did work in math education a tiny bit.
Like substitute teach, or was it like higher level?
I worked for a nonprofit that was basically writing a computer game that would teach kids the math curriculum, grades 3 through 6 or so. Yeah. It was really cool to be a part of, and I did the editing.
Oh, cool.
I'm sorry. Yeah. When I say editing, I literally took the Russian translation and looked for cultural mistranslations.
I see.
Yeah, so I had a very tedious job that I was very bad at.
Wow, so they're stealing nuclear tech from us, and we're stealing math tech from them. I feel like that's backwards. I feel like one of us should have both of those.
There was a great example they gave us in the like editing. They go, like, there was a problem being like Igor and his wife and children share an apartment with Ivan and his wife and children. And if they pay, you're like, well, first of all, you have to like, well, American families don't typically share living spaces.
Oh,
so it was interesting.
Yeah. So what do you say? Like, these two families have to pitch into the HOA board.
Yeah, right.
And you're like,
how do they split rent if one of them has, 3 of the 5 rooms? But Sanderson, so what they do is they kind of visualize things using like YouTube, and they can create kind of moving 3D things that better show these problems. I think if you could visualize these problems better, then less people would be frustrated with math, because right now currently math on a whiteboard with static pictures relies you to kind of play with these shapes and alter figures in your head. Not everyone can do that that easily, but once you've had someone show you a picture, and I've had that experience where I just look at one picture and then a problem that's mystified me for years just gets a lot easier.
Yeah, and I think that differs via type of math, right? Like geometry way easier when you could see what you're talking about. Where like calculus, they were like, you're finding the area underneath this curve, and I was like, that does not help me with whatever this formula is here.
But then you see things like the Riemann sum, which is basically taking the area under the curve by taking thinner and thinner rectangles of it.
Okay, yes.
Like make a little bar graph of it, and then make them thinner and thinner, and theoretically once you get thin enough, that should exactly be the area. That's the Riemann sum.
Right.
And that's the thing that I say it to you right now. If you're not familiar with it, that's probably just a bunch of frustrating words. But if you show a picture of getting smaller, it makes sense. But if you actually showed a moving image, a video of that happening, that would make sense to you.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right with my experience with coding and math. I do think they are linked, and I have the exact same problem with both of them. I can conceptualize it. I understand it conceptually perfectly, and I can memorize the syntax for like, if we're talking coding, I can memorize the syntax. I can memorize a formula. I cannot put them together.
Okay.
I don't understand why certain variables, like even like if-then statements, fairly basic. Right. I understand that. Anything above that, I'm like, wait, why does this go here with it? But
for loops.
Yes, but if you were to ask me why, or like to explain what an integral is, I could do what you just did. It's the Riemann. So it's the area of the boxes, and you just make them thinner and thinner until it gives you the area of the curve. Like, I understand that completely.
And then can you understand the formula? Why the formula gets there?
That's the part that
might be a hard
up.
question. I think but that's the fundamental theorem of calculus.
Yeah. So I was in elementary school. I have a very interesting relationship with math. I feel like in elementary school, I was nationally ranked for the math team. Like third grade.
That's incredible.
One recess a month.
12 and under wonder.
Yeah. It's gone downhill from there.
Yeah.
One recess a month, I would go in and I would take math classes, and I was like, I mean, there were 20,000 kids that were like, yeah, I'll take math during recess. I was in like the top 350 or something. So I wasn't like stupid high up. I had a friend that was like in the 50s or something like that. I crushed it in math. I like passed out of every single math class. I was a grade ahead. I was 2 grades ahead at one point in school. And what I realized with math, and it took me being an adult to realize exactly what this was, but I just slowly got worse compared to my peers at math. I didn't keep getting better. As the math got harder, it got harder for me than it did for the other people in my class. And I realized I think I'm good at recognizing patterns, but I'm not good at math. So when math was basic, I could recognize, if it was basic algebra, like, all right, well, it's 9x plus 7 equals 18, like, what's x? I would just kind of memorize, like, oh, that's a pattern. You pull that over here. But as the formulas got longer, I couldn't memorize the pattern anymore because it was too much to memorize.
Right.
Does that make sense? Am I thinking about that in any sort of a logical way?
It doesn't make sense to me. I think pattern recognition is the whole... That's what the movie Pi is a really good movie.
I don't think I ever saw it.
It's good. It's a good thriller. Yeah,
okay.
It's an exciting movie. But it talks about math is just pattern recognition. And I don't know. I don't know enough about math to say that's true or not true. But yeah.
What a hot place to start the podcast. Like, this is on math, but I don't know enough about math to...
I don't know. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm some... Because there's such incredible levels of understanding and intelligence, and I know. As much as I love it and as much time I've spent with it, I know that I am a hobbyist relative to any PhD student or someone working in the field.
So what did you study?
Applied math.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would say I took if you were a full math major at a strong school, I probably learned 60% to maybe 70% of the math you learned. If you went to a bad school, I might have learned all of it. But I did a lot of code, so it was a lot of coding with the math. But so I took all the calculus classes through multivariable differential equations, partial differential equations.
Okay.
A lot of linear algebra. We kind of dug our heels into linear algebra, which is just the matrices, things you see like matrices, big sets of numbers, and how to massage those numbers to create patterns and things like compressing the file size of an image. Finding optimal solutions for big equations, multivariable equations. So those were the biggest things we learned.
I think you just gave half the listeners a fucking panic attack with just that sentence. They're like, what? No, I mean, we'll boil it down. We're not going to talk linear algebra the whole time in the most scientific in the most scientific way. I don't want them to turn off and be like, I don't know, those two fucking nerds are just going after it.
But Matt, I liked it. It was hard. I went to a difficult school. I was one of the worst students in my program.
Sure.
For the sake of effort and intelligence.
That's how I rode through all my. I was in every honors class, and I was the worst worst kid in every honors class.
Yeah, where'd you go to school?
For college, I went to Michigan Tech.
Okay.
So engineering school. I went up there to be a music producer, like a sound engineer at first. And then I was like, that's a hobby. That's not.
Yeah.
So I switched majors to something else that's a hobby. And at least I was able to, like, throw the economics onto that. It'd be weird if I was like sound engineering and econ.
Yes.
To be like, really? What?
You sound like a practical guy.
I try to be. I like to have a plan B. Oldest sibling. I like to plan things out. It's like people that are just like, I don't know, I'll figure it out. I'm like, you're fucking crazy.
Crazy.
You're out of your goddamn mind with that attitude.
Did your parents instill that?
No, I don't think so. It's just general anxiety, bossing my brothers around, seeing like my youngest sibling. He doesn't plan shit. He's like, he did this thing during COVID where he tried to get back to Spain without like his work visa during COVID being registered. He got to Spain and they kicked him out.
Wow.
And he was just like, and then he had to spend 4 nights on my couch. And I was looking at him going like, you're so lucky I fucking live here. Like, what were you going to do if I didn't live in this city? It's not like he put it together like, oh yeah, if they kick me out of Spain, I'll stay with Corey.
Yeah.
But like, that would have never happened to me. Never.
So you're a planning guy.
He's so much more fun than I am.
Yeah.
So much more likable. So much more fun.
Those are the friends, right? The ones who really just let shit fly. But then those are friends that are gonna have to like, you're gonna get a call at 3 a.m. You're gonna have to do them a favor.
They need us so much.
I don't know where I fall on that spectrum. I think I'm now that kind of person, but I did some stupid shit. I moved to LA with everything in my car with no job. Yeah. Oh, I did have a job. I planned on having a job. I just got fired.
Oh.
So I would say that was a lack of planning. When I started doing comedy, I started getting really reckless.
Yeah.
To be fair, I didn't have a job until the day I graduated. I applied to one job and I got the offer the day I graduated college. I don't know what I was going to do.
I mean, that's way more than a lot of people I know.
Sure.
I graduated, no job. I was 1 day away from delivering pizzas before I ended up working for the Clinton campaign.
Yeah.
It was like I was hired. They were like, you start tomorrow with these pizzas. And
wow. Okay. So similar.
The campaign was like, all right, drive down to Toledo today. And I was like, so I had to call them and be like, sorry guys, I'm out.
What was that like, the campaign?
Oh, that was crazy. I actually did a solo podcast on that. So I think it's like episode 45. The listeners should go back and listen to that whole thing because I have so many fucking stories from it. But it was a nightmare. No, it was all people skills.
Okay.
It kind of like, in a way, it helped with comedy because it made me like, you couldn't be fearful at all. Just like of the general
like
public.
Barking.
So, oh my
especially
God.
with a figure like Hillary,
so
who's
good at barking.
so hated.
Oh my God.
Her first name evokes hate.
Yes. I had to, so like when I was going around trying to get voter registration, I couldn't say like, or like trying to get volunteers, I couldn't say, do you want to help Hillary? I had to say, do you want to help stop Donald Trump? Because everybody hated him.
Wow.
But they also hated her.
Right.
So if I could position it as like a way to like position it so that they feel like they're not helping Hillary, they're like doing a greater good, which is stopping him, then I could get them to volunteer. But it was like, it didn't help very much because they realized they were helping Hillary after a little while. And they were like, the biggest thing that got it is everyone thought she was going to win.
Yes.
Like the media putting Trump on their platform or whatever, like that wasn't good in terms of Hillary winning. The thing that hurt them the most was the media saying that there was no way Hillary was going to lose. That's what killed us. And nobody talks about that. I was like, I had volunteers abandon me on election day because they were like, yeah, she's going to win. I don't know. I'm tired. This election's been long. And
I really fought. I was in that boat. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Called my mom, congratulated her the day before. I'm like, we have our first female president in your lifetime. Aren't you so excited? And then even as the results are coming, I'm like, yeah, he's not going to. I'm going to talk to someone on a plane. I'm like, don't worry, he's not going to win.
Yeah.
Oh, the arrogance of liberals.
The arrogance. The arrogance. My dad texted me because Ohio's numbers, I was in Ohio. I grew up in Michigan. Ohio's numbers came in first. My dad texted me. He's like, what the fuck are you guys doing down in Ohio? And I was like, I knew we were going to lose. Like weeks before, I knew we were going to lose Ohio.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Because the way they set everything up, and we can get into like the math and stats of this, is all of their numbers were based off Obama numbers from 2012. And they were like, all right, everybody who voted for Obama should vote for Hillary. And so that's the only people we were talking to, is these Obama voters. And in the inner city part of Toledo, they would all say, yeah. Like, except for the few, it'd always be men that were like, no, I'm never voting for a woman. What are you, like, are you fucking crazy? We got that all the time. But my territory was out in the sticks and the suburbs, because they were like, oh, this pretty white boy, we'll put him with the other, like, get him to talk to these people. That's he's suburban Midwestern, they're suburban Midwestern. And half of them were like, no, I fucking hate her. Like, why would I vote for her at all? And the only argument I had was like, Donald Trump's about to put at least 2, maybe 3 Supreme Court justices on the court. And I could pull a few over with that, but they were like, nah, she's a bitch, part of the deep state. Like, these were Obama voters that were doing that. And so their numbers were so skewed. And so I was sitting there going like, man, like half of these Obama voters are just not going to vote, or they're voting for Trump. Like, she's losing Ohio. What I didn't realize is that Michigan did it too. Like, I didn't have the broader perspective on it. So when my dad was like, what the fuck is Ohio doing? I was like, oh, I knew we were going to lose. And then 2 hours later, when Michigan started coming in, I was like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, what happened over here? But it was like the same. My grandma was volunteering with Michigan, and she said the same thing, which is like, everyone is like, nah, Hillary's going to win. I don't need to do anything. Like, we're good. And they just didn't want to take the time.
How did Biden win?
I think Biden won because people took Trump seriously that time.
Okay.
I think that's the only reason.
So it was more non-voters got out. Did Trump lose voters?
No, both the numbers for both sides were higher, actually.
Wow.
But it was the Democrats weren't complacent in 2020 like they were in 16.
Liberals like to be like, people saw how bad he was and stopped voting for him. Is that not true at all?
No. No, his numbers went up because the Republicans were like, oh shit, like, they're coming for us. They like batten down the hatches.
Do you think Trump could win again?
Yeah. I think it'd be ignorant to say he couldn't. And I know a lot of people are, but I'm like, did you learn nothing from 6 years ago? Like, what the fuck? Biden can't put 2 sentences together.
Yeah.
That's going to really turn off a lot of people.
He's so old. And then it's so scary because liberals are going to get really cocky again and try to do something fancy and try to put someone forward who isn't that likable but is fresh and young and cool. And it's like, no, that's not really winning strategy for us.
No, they need a moderate. The thing they have going for them right now is that the Republican House is completely in disarray.
Yeah, that shit
They're not going to get anything done.
They're doing exactly what we did.
Yeah.
Is they're because they lost, they're all pointing fingers within their own ranks at who caused it, and then it's just nothing but division. That's exactly what happened when Trump won. Like, liberals were like, we need to go farther left, and they're like, we need to go more moderate. And then they were like, well, you're as bad as a Republican. Like, you're an extremist destroying our party. And it was it's so great to just see that flip to the other side.
I know, right? It's like, hey, you thought you were immune, you stupid fucks?
This is the one question I've been having politically for my group chat is, it seems that no matter how outlandish a Republican acts, they are still embraced.
Yes.
And this is within the national representative ranks. People like Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Lauren Boebert were like, oh, they're too extreme. They won't. And then they've become figureheads for their party. Even by the party, Fox News loves them. They're not. And then now we have George Santos. I'm like, is he the first person to go too far? Because that's a hard one to like stand behind. He's the most lying politician I've ever met, which is quite impressive to say.
Yeah.
Ever witnessed.
Right.
At least within the national.
I think if I'm going back to the first part of your statement, I don't know if those people have necessarily been embraced by the party as a whole. in the national sense.
When you're
Maybe
talking about liberals
the vote,
are making a big deal out of them.
I think that the moderate Republicans feel like they are the lesser of two evils, with the greater evil being AOC and Rashida Tlaib and the progressive left. They would rather have the extreme right wing than the extreme left wing.
Sure.
Where I think moderate Democrats would be the opposite. I'd rather have the extreme left wing have a little bit of power than the extreme right wing. George Santos is interesting. I don't know for sure. He is very hard to get behind, but I think they're going to write him as like a one-off. Like, that's a crazy person.
Right.
Like, don't worry about him.
But again, all the previous crazy people have become power players.
It's true.
Except for Herschel Walker was also that first sign of like, oh, they won't put any Republican over any Democrat.
Yes.
And there were a lot of people who just, there was great interviews going around Georgia, which is where my mom lives. They're like, oh, I think he's horribly unqualified, but I can't have a radical leftist.
Raphael Warnock, yeah.
So
who's
so I'm
very
going to vote for him.
centrist.
Yeah, they're like, people even be like, Raphael Warnock seems like a good guy, seems like an experienced politician who's good for the job, but I have to vote for a Republican because I'm a Republican. And they're like, and I understand what Herschel is. So that was kind of the first sign of that. And then,
I do think it's getting better in terms for the Democrats. I think people are
until we get cocky.
Becoming less right. People are becoming less angry at politics in general, which is what I think pushed them to the edges. However, never underestimate the liberals' ability to get cocky,
right?
Which could totally undermine.
We have become the upper class party. It's so ridiculous.
The educated party. There's a lot of stats. If we're bringing it back, talking about how the Democrats are now the party of, you could say the party of the elite, but when you get to the elite, it's actually mostly still Republicans.
Yes.
The split became, are you college educated or not?
Right.
And one of the bigger issues with that is that, and I got this from the Plain English podcast. Go check that out. It's one of the writers for The Atlantic. He's fucking awesome. It's my favorite podcast. He's talking about how Plain English, yeah. The Democrats have become the party of the educated, which has meant that they have become the party of women, because women are graduating college at a 65% clip and men are graduating at like a 35 to 40% clip.
This was on Mar. I saw a taping of Mar. We went and see it live with my mom, the guy who wrote the book of Boys and Men, I think was the book.
Yes, he was on the podcast. So I've listened to him, but I haven't read the book.
The stat was one of the most staggering stats was Bill Maher talked about going to college in the 70s, went to Cornell or something like that, and he talked about how it was mostly men back then.
Yeah.
And the guy who wrote the book said it's actually worse now for men than it was then for women in terms of the ratios.
Yeah.
The differential between men and women is now more pronounced in the I would say better direction historically.
Well, the more empathetic direction for sure.
It's just crazy, yeah.
But it's like, why the whole theory around men aren't men anymore, all this other stuff, and it's like, I think men are the same, but the people in power are more women. There's just more, not at the top.
Women are just
not at the top. You look at CEOs, and they're all still men, but you look at all the media companies and you go to their LinkedIn, it's all women.
Yeah.
There's no men working at these companies anymore, and it's because men aren't graduating from these top tier Ivy League schools at the same rate, and if they are, they're becoming engineers and they're going in STEM, but men generally don't graduate with liberal arts or journalism degrees. Women do, and so they go into these media companies, and that's who's it's not the Jews, it's the women.
Yeah. I went to 2 different schools in Georgia. I went to a public school in a very wealthy suburb. One of the best public schools.
We're talking high school or
this was
college?
Just 8th grade.
Okay.
And then from there I went to a private school in Atlanta that was very, very wealthy. And what I noticed kind of way later was that the when it was called Dickerson Middle School fed into Walton. That was the public one, and it was in East Cobb, and it was the East Cobb snobs. Oh, they're so rich, but they're rich.
Yeah.
And then you realize they gave themselves that name, and then you go see Real Wealth, and they don't need to tell you they're snobs. They don't need to show you off the brands. They have the money.
Yeah,
they're wealthy in a less overt but way more significant way. And what I noticed was that the suburban upper middle class people were more outspokenly Republican, whereas my high school turned out to be more liberal than I ever realized. Yeah, especially the women. When I look now, my evidence is anecdotal, but I look at my Facebook now, and the women were posting a lot of stuff about anti-Trump, pro-Hillary, pro-Biden, pro-Black Lives Matter, all these things. So that was really surprising to see that. Yeah, because they were educated, ranked wealth or white.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you think about like Trump from like he was anti-school, he was moderately anti-women, he was very anti-other races, and so when you look at like an educated woman, they're like, yeah, those are what I am. Yeah. Like, how could I possibly vote for him? Where like you look at men, especially one of the other, I was almost about to say fun stats that came out. It's not super fun. Hispanics in Florida and Texas, even Hispanic women were starting to flip towards Trump.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
Especially Cubans. Because they are terrified
socialism's the boogeyman,
of, yes, exactly.
That was the monster under their bed.
And so when they're like, oh, that's a party, when the Democrats, that's a party of women, that's a party of the highly educated. Well, I'm a man and I'm not highly educated, and they want to tell me what to do with all of my money that I came over from Cuba to get specifically. Like, fuck them, I'm voting for Trump. And it's all like, I think it's more instinctual than we give it credit for, right? Like a lot of talking heads want to find like all these tiny little, like they lose the forest through the trees type thing, where they find, well, all right, well, this person has this for a background, and like they had divorced parents, and like they kissed a boy once in high school, and like that's why they're liberal.
Try
and
to
you're
regress
like,
all the data.
Yeah, and it's like, or this message just resonated with who he feels like he is as a person. And you're like, oh, yeah, people are pretty simple when it comes to that.
Very simple.
It's like, who would I rather hang out with, that person or that person?
Or you see in comedy, like, you just finish a show and you see which people walk up to which comics.
Yes, I love that.
And for me, it's a weird thing because I will have, like, really...
95% women who want to talk about how handsome you are.
No, what I have is, I would say a good portion, and it was for a long time, of just like fratty white guys who are like, yeah, I get you, man. Yep. People think I'm a douchebag too. I'm like, you might actually be. Like, that's, yeah. And then I get like,
you're like, no, sorry, nerdy. My major was applied math. Yeah, I'm actually a nerd.
I was like, we didn't have fraternities. I was terrible at drinking, and some of those people like resonate, and that's cool. I don't know if I fully align with them. I mean, like, you kind of hope that not all of your comedy resonates with one person. Like, it should be kind of a mixed bag, but and then I get like some like Indian kid who was like a coder, or like an Indian couple or Asian couple that was like doctors and like that, and they resonate with some part of it. That feels really good. I always feel like it's so fun when you can connect with someone who doesn't have exactly the same background, because when you see someone who looks like you go on stage, you just like them more. Yeah, it's just it's so simple. I remember the first comedy show I saw was like the Latin Kings of Comedy. Girl I was dating took me to it, and I didn't resonate. And then when you see someone who like reminds you, then I saw Donald Glover, and he talked about going to a private school in Georgia. I'm like, that one I know.
Yeah. And you also identify as a black man.
I also identify as a black NYU kid who was a SoundCloud rapper. Yes. Yeah,
who's gonna win an EGOT?
He will. He will.
The first comic I was really into was Daniel Tosh. At the time, I was like, oh, I just love Daniel Tosh. It's like, yeah, from your framing that you just said, it's like, oh, tall, straight white man who's like goofy? Of course.
And put together. I mean, that was the same thing for me, where
he
I
didn't seem slovenly.
When I think we were somewhat similar in age, I thought comedy was either really funny black dudes, right? Or...
Which it really, is. They are the best.
Well, they are the best. Or it was all I saw on TV was Dave Attell and Jim Norton's.
Yeah.
That was all you would see or even like early Louis, where like, oh, you have to be and they would talk about how disgusting they were and how they ate poorly and they were poor. And I'm like, I don't really relate to that and just kind of feel bad for them. And then I saw Tosh and I was like, holy shit, you can be all those things and funny?
Yeah.
You know who's a big revelation for me? John Mayer. John Mayer would do bits, and I was like, oh, that's so cool.
He's funny.
He's funny. I mean, yeah, yes and no, but yeah.
It's like
he had some jokes that were cool. The bar was low.
The bar is low. It's like Blake Griffin doing comedy. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, good for you, Blake.
But Mayer could own his arrogance and still be funny. I thought that was really cool. Because I'm for how big of a douchebag he is, and he can pull it off, there's hope for me yet.
Yeah.
So those two. And again, like, I feel some sense of kinship looking at them, apparently, both of them. And yeah.
It's the beer test. It's the political beer test, to bring it full circle. Like they figured out in the 90s, like, oh, people want to vote for who they feel like they'd have a beer with. And comedy has gone that way. It's not about like, oh, this is like, people don't go to shows anymore to be like, all right, let's see what the weirdos are doing in basements in New York anymore. It's not entertainment. It's like they want to feel like they could be friends with that. And so you've still got your Bill Burr, who's one of the best, and like that's work. Like, working class dudes are like, I know 9 dudes like him. He's the funniest. I would have a beer with. He would be my best friend. If we were hanging out, he would be my best friend. And I think my new favorite development in comedy in that theory is what I'm calling the boy band comedian.
Wow, well put. I've been thinking about this all morning.
That would be like Matt Rife, like the TikTok comedians. They're like 24, 25, beautiful dudes, like just like super attractive. Their fans
that was such a rare thing when I started comedy.
Oh my! Dane Cook, I think, was the first one where like teenage girls were into him. Yeah, right. And he's not even objectively that attractive, but like, you look at the TikTok
next
comics,
to Jim Norton, who's this competition, next to Patrice.
Right, right. And so now, like, you got like people like Matt Rife are selling out theaters, and it's 16 to 23-year-old girls that are screaming like it's the Beatles in the 60s. Yeah. Or like the fucking One Direction or the Jonas Brothers or something like that. And I was like, that is fascinating that we have, like, comedy has kind of followed the path of music in that way. It breaks the kind of rules that I was taught were fundamental, which is you can't be above the crowd. You have to always be. Yes. Like, it was so hammered into me that comedy's about failure and not self-deprecation is too cheap of a word, but vulnerability and sharing your weaknesses and shortcomings. And when I look at some of those boy band comedians, like, this makes me feel bad about myself because they're so good looking and their life is so put together. But girls don't feel that way. No, they want to fuck them. They want to fuck them. And I don't know what their fan bases look like, but perhaps they have a more diverse fan base than that. I've seen their TikTok comments, so it's like. I'm abstaining from any commentary on that for the record. But yeah, please book us, Matt. Yeah. We'd love to open for you. Yeah, right. And you're fucking. He's gonna sell out the Garden in a year. It's crazy. No, I'm not trying to shit. I'm not trying to shit on him. I am not the comedian. Statistically, it's pulling out a new demographic that was kind of not catered to. That's exactly it. Right. Because their bits are like I had a chance to go after that demographic when I was 28 and on television before I was working at social media. Ooh, fucked it up, man. Now they're like, who's this guy who looks like my dad? No, trying to be hot. No, see, your fans have money. The teenage girls don't have money. That is a big motivating factor for me. This is pretentious to say, but like, I started in Houston, and one of the biggest benefits for me for starting in Houston, it is one of the most educated cities in the country. It has NASA. It is the hub of all petrochemical engineering. You have mechanical, electrical engineering. You have the energy trading down there. Yeah. Chevron. My friend works at Shell. They have all of them based there. Sure. And we have the world's biggest medical center by a factor of 4. Jesus. 4 times bigger. Baylor. Is it like the size of a college? UT, yeah, like an entire college university. It's just a neighborhood. It's just a sector of town. Wow. Where it's just continuous medical centers and colleges. God damn. I thought Ann Arbor was like big. Much bigger. Because I mean, it's multiple colleges all put there in the downtown area. It's just called Medical District. And my crowds were typically very educated. So I got to play to, when I was starting out, I got to kind of
play that a bit more than I probably would have gotten away with in another city. And when I take that other places, sometimes those jokes, 4 minutes on medicine would bomb. But there was a statistic I learned that made me very happy was that, not to compare myself to Seinfeld, but the first season of Seinfeld didn't do amazing numbers. Based on just ratings alone, it should have been canceled. But you know the answer?
It was the wealthy people that liked it.
They could put BMW commercials.
Yeah.
That was it. They could sell a BMW because the people who were watching it were fewer in number, but had the discretionary income to buy luxury goods.
Yep.
So I always thought about, like, if you chase that kind of act, which I'm still working on doing, like, you might be able to sell $60 tickets.
Yeah.
You know, you might be able to sell 3 times as many $60 tickets rather than a bunch of $20 tickets.
Right. Did you notice the same thing happen in the World Cup?
No.
Did you watch any of the World Cup?
A little bit.
So...
Actually, I watched the last 7 minutes, and that's it.
Hey, it was a great 7 minutes.
It was a great 7 minutes.
Great 7 minutes. Top tier 7 minutes. So they have, in soccer, since there's not nearly as many commercials, they have a lot more ads around the field. And that you've got those banners there. And I was watching with my friend who, like, not a big soccer fan, didn't really know what was going on. And she was like, why are all those American companies? I thought half the world watch the World Cup. And it wasn't just like TV commercials. These were banners on the field that, like, everyone in the fucking world was seeing these banners. It was for Google, for like Exxon, for like Microsoft, like all these American companies. And I was like, well, one American is worth 20,000 Indian people when you talk about buying power.
Yeah.
So it's like, even
what
though...
if you just didn't say when you talk about buying power?
No, I was like, I have to make sure
Cut
that
the clip there.
Just chop that right out.
Yeah, American consumption there's nothing like it.
And so it's like, all right, so 15 million people watched the World Cup final in America, and 1 billion Indians watched it. But these companies have decided, whether this is right or wrong, I'm not making a judgment statement on whether this is how things should be or not. This is just something that I noticed. They're willing to bet that an ad that's targeted to Americans is going to make them more money than an ad that's going to be targeted towards 750 million Indian people.
Right.
And I think it's easy as Americans to forget that.
And also, the Americans who watch the World Cup are typically wealthier Americans.
Yes.
So that's a real good bullseye.
That's right. It's everyone in Williamsburg.
Yeah.
Like,
I was in Queens.
There's like, what, 1 million people in Williamsburg? I don't know.
I did Queens, and there was like a lot of soccer stuff. I was like, this kind of area where like you love soccer either because you're from the country that plays it or you're white and ashamed of being white.
Yeah. You're like, you decided the NFL was too violent.
Yeah, right.
It's like, no, I don't like the concussion stuff. They're like, I'm going to play soccer. Oh, there's more concussions there? Well, all right. I won't worry about that.
Yeah, I'll have a beer, Heineken, please.
Do you have Stella Artois at this bar?
But that kind of stuff is.
But the way that they figure that out is crazy to me. Like, how are they doing the math? It has to come back in these huge returns, like these huge spreadsheets where they're like,
I think A/B testing could solve a lot of it. Just like
Yeah.
I don't know how much I'm able to say. Someone I know through someone I know was the engineer of like basically the Twitter ads. Twitter ads.
I bet they've had a wild year.
They did very, very well. Oh no, they left, sold it, and now work for. No, I have a new company.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to disguise all the details of this. But he told me how this stuff worked, and it would just basically microsecond processing, try to look at your information, see which ad it could show you optimally, and it would track if you clicked it or not, and it would basically trying to show you the ad you're most likely to click.
Yeah.
And if that ad was shown, they would charge the advertiser. Right. So, and if that ad was clicked, they could charge the advertiser more.
Yeah.
But basically running incredible math at incredible speeds to do all this without any human thought, just being like,
right,
this data, this history correlates to liking J. Crew, and we show them J. Crew, or this history. Yeah. So doing all those things in microprocesses, and I wonder if the data pulled from that could make them make bigger decisions about, the banners at soccer games.
I know that's how the stock market works now too.
Yes, yeah, high frequency trading, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with that for a while.
One of my
should be banned.
Oh, 100%.
It's so against everything it all stands for.
It's machines with trillions of dollars reacting to a people like me putting down a couple grand and then going like, all right, well, tweak it just like the tiniest amount, sell like 1 cent of our like company share. But my favorite fact with that is they did put the cables. Yeah. Yes, where
I submitted a Daily Show piece about this as my application for
no
it.
shit. Yeah. I love this. Where like, so explain it. I mean, you know it better than I do, I'm sure.
I mean, it's been years. You can explain it.
Okay, it's essentially saying like computers are running the stock market, like they are doing trades, supercomputers,
like that level on GoldenEye,
AI,
the big archives,
and they're just like every little reaction to all these trillions and trillions of data points is how they tweak up stocks up and down and try to like figure out when to buy, sell. And
like these are fractions of a second, and selling for just like an extra penny or two, and just catching when it's going to move 2 pennies and selling in and out within before you can sneeze.
Right, and these are like the companies doing it. Like it's not just like one evil billionaire who set up a bunch of computers. They're all doing it.
It's where most of the profit in the stock market is made. Is that right?
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I don't know how it couldn't be.
Right.
There's so much farther advanced than any one or group of people could be. But essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, those micro transactions happen so fast that the distance the server is that they're on to the stock market trading floor,
which is in
actually
a building next to
gives advantages based on just like trillionths of a second that it takes for the extra thing. So they had to put in safeguards on the stock floor so that
there was one regulated length of cable.
There's one regulated length of cable.
If the supercomputers were just closer to the wall that was closer to the stock exchange, that extra couple feet, and think about the I don't know if these are fiber optic cables, because that would be closer to would that be the speed? Maybe it's speed of electricity is very, very fast for like human scale.
Yeah, but it's not the speed of light.
Speed.
I think it's light speed because they're fiber optics. Yeah.
Fiber optic would be, I mean, it's not a vacuum, but that would be pretty impressive speed. Yeah. So if you're talking about the speed of that information traveling through a fiber optic cable, an extra, I don't know, 40 feet?
If that. Could
be
give
like a massive advantage.
Yeah.
It could be 6 feet.
And it's like, yep, that's the reason JP Morgan Chase is outdoing TD Bank today.
Yep.
And it's like...
Yep.
Oh, we're so fucked.
Nosebleed seats in the supercomputer silo. Yeah.
That's why Bitcoin was so much fun for a little while. No computers involved.
Yeah. I guess more math. We should go back to generally.
Yeah, sure.
I love it. I've always loved it. I think the world would be better if more people gave it a chance.
Okay.
And I think there are flaws in the education. I can only speak for myself that when it's taught properly, it's really fun, but it's also very frustrating, and that's part of the process.
Yeah.
But if you can push through that frustration, the high is typically worth it. And I think that's a very simple statement that if you're a person who exercises regularly, you know that it sucks to start the workout, but you've also felt the high at the end of it, and your brain starts to register that Pavlovian ding earlier and earlier, and then it becomes pretty easy to go to the gym. It sucks for everyone, but you start to build the pathways. I think math has a similar thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know everyone's designed to love it, and I know that there's the same way people have dyslexia with reading. I'm sure there's a lot of people who have barriers in place for math.
Yeah. No, my mom is one of those people. It's just like, it doesn't click.
No,
just like there's something, which like when I was growing up, she couldn't understand why I was so good at it. And I was like, turns out I wasn't that good at it comparatively. But as a kid, it looked like I was going to be. I like what you're saying though about being like mostly competent, like at least appreciating it. I don't know, and I like the analogy that you use for working out. I don't know that people are seeing the value in learning math in the same way that for 30 years, like, or for longer than that, Americans especially didn't see the value in working out. They were like, why would I, like, it sucks in the beginning, and then, okay, I get used to it, but like, why would I want to do that? And now, like, all this science has come out that says, like, oh no, you need to work out. It's for all these reasons. And
what about the runner's high? That's a real documented thing.
It is, yeah. It's
your
hard
body
to get.
senses pain and senses that you're not going to stop feeling that pain.
Yeah.
So it starts sending out endorphins to block that pain, and that comes with it an emotional high.
Yeah. So you're saying you need to get the math high. That is probably what those like top tier mathematicians, like, they get into a flow state, right?
I mean, when I do problems now, usually I'm like, don't back out now. Don't stop now, because if you get to the end and sometimes very often I'll need a little help, but like, let's minimize the amount of help. This was the thing I learned working in math education. Every problem, it's the exact same algorithm as an RPG. So what happens is it's
a role-playing game, like you're talking video games. Yeah.
Where it's very easy to level up. And you're like, oh, this is kind of boring. Oh, I'm a new level. That feels good.
Right.
Ding, high. Red notification, all that. Oh, I want to feel that again. And you work a little harder. Ding, high. But, now you got to work a little. But every time you space out those intervals, and you don't make it you make it a little easy at the beginning, but you can't make it too easy. It has to get a little harder.
Yep.
And you kind of basically you build a gap. You build a gap that is for them to walk across, and it can't be too easy. There's no satisfaction. It can't be too hard, because if you get to the end and you get that ding, but it wasn't worth all the effort you put in. This is why when you do a problem set at the end of a chapter, the first couple problems are easy and then they get harder.
Right.
Because you want to program that high at the perfect point. What I think is very interesting between comedy and math is I think comedy jokes are very similar.
Yeah.
Jokes, the closest thing I've ever seen to a joke is a riddle, and that there's typically and Seinfeld described it this way, some gap in information that you are giving them, you're presenting them this gap and then feeding them just the right amount of information to close that gap themselves.
Yeah.
That neural activity, someone called the joke a neural short circuit, taking two pieces of information that don't seem connected and then very quickly blazing a path between them.
Yes.
Very rapidly.
Right.
That is a joke to me. And that's
the A to C concept.
A to C
that's
concept.
Very basic, which essentially says, like, you give them what you're saying. You give them one topic, the comic jumps to something that wasn't the next logical step,
and then shows them the connection.
But they piece together what happened during B to get to there, and it catches them by surprise because they didn't hear what B was.
And I think that thinking you have to do is really satisfying, and I think that's where laughter comes from. I think laughter is kind of
interesting. Okay.
I think you have to at least, there's some very simple people who just want to hear someone say get her done, but I think a joke works on that level where you want to have that, but you can't make it too hard. If you make it too hard to figure out, the crowd hates you.
Yes.
And they groan and they're like, oh, that made me feel stupid.
Yeah.
But it can't be too easy. Then it's an obvious joke, and then that's not fun either. So it's that creating that distance. And Seinfeld talked about just basically building a little gap, a little canyon you have to jump over. And you don't want to be able to step over it. You want to be able to run and land, right?
Yeah.
Barely. And you don't want to fall into the canyon.
Yep.
It's too big. So building those gaps, and then riddles. I used to do puzzles for my website, Monday Punday, and those were the same thing where I'd watch. Has to be hard enough that they get some sense of satisfaction, but not so hard they resent you for making them work.
Yeah.
Math is very similar. Math problems are very similar. And that's kind of why I love jokes. Yeah.
Well, and the fun part about jokes is that you can go try it. You could build the gap, because like I feel like if you wrote a math problem and you gave it to a bunch of kids and then they all got the one problem wrong, you're kind of like, I feel bad, that one was too hard. Sorry guys, I fucked that one up. Which, like, if you had good teachers growing up, they would look at that problem and go like, yeah, my bad guys,
right,
and then take it off the test. Which generally I had with comedy. You get to go out every night and you can tweak the canyon.
We are the ultimate demographers. We are statisticians. We are polling.
We are
little A/B testing every night. Yeah,
that is and that's why I love it. That's what applied psychology is technically what applied psychology and economics. So it's like creating these scenarios where I could test people's reactions to stuff is kind of megalomaniac. How do you
megalomaniacal?
Yes, thank you. See, the word gets too big and I can't do it, but I tried. Have you thought? Are you a music person at all?
No.
Okay.
No, I have no other performance art skills I mean, I think if I had picked up an instrument, I might have been really into it, but I'm not coordinated.
Sure.
I probably wouldn't have been a very good musician.
So music theory is all math in the same way that you're thinking of comedy as all math.
Right.
It's all intervals. It's like what makes
Resonance,
what makes a really cool piece of a song is that Like it's a riff where you're bouncing around notes, but it can't sound random. It has to sound put together, but you're following the rules of this, like, and creating this thing where people don't know what's going to come next, but after they hear it, they're like, that was the perfect interval there. And my favorite, or one of my favorite through lines between math, music, and comedy is the rhythm of it.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you've basic music theory, most songs are written in 4/4, just 4/4 time, just 1 2 3 4 1 over and over and over again, and that's those are the brackets that you put your notes in. And so comedy has a rule of threes, where if you're telling a joke to someone, you have one first beat, the second beat, and then the third beat is like your ultimate punchline.
Because 2 is the minimum number to establish a pattern.
Exactly.
And then
so
break
then
the
that
pattern.
third one is where you break the pattern.
Or you accomplish the pattern in a very unexpected way.
Yes. But the overall point of this is that comedy is written in 4/4 time. Most of the time, the fourth beat in that measure is the laughter of the people. So they are finishing your riff for you with their laughter. And so what you need to do, to your point, is set up those first 3 beats where you could set up the canyon and get them to the point where they feel like they're a part of what you are creating and filling out the rest of that measure. I just think it's
cool.
so
I've
fucking
never seen
cool
that
how that
connection.
all goes together.
Never seen that. I never thought about that. It's the fourth beat. The fourth beat.
The fourth beat.
What I
Good name
love
for a book.
What I love is a lot of comedians I know are very bad at math, and most mathematicians I know are not very funny. There truly is a link between social skills and mathematical analytical ability. I do think they are
Elaborate on
antithetical.
that. Oh, antithetical. Okay,
yeah,
I thought you were going to say they were like they
think
had these secret social skills that they just didn't know how to use yet, like they were fucking a superhero.
No, I do think on some level you can apply that. I think I have, from my background, kind of started to understand social skills and entertainment and even charisma that I have to fake on a mathematical level, that it's still just a set of processes. And if you, it's what's the human algorithm is attempt, observe, adjust, right? Is that the 3? It's,
I haven't heard this before.
Yeah, just you try something, you see the results, and then you try again. Most things can be achieved in that way. It's very broad. Obviously, there takes some intuition about exactly how to. I mean, I don't think anyone can do comedy. You can learn a lot of ability to do comedy if you just follow that over and over again. But ultimately, you need some intuition about where to go based on the results. And
there's always something that separates the top tier from like. I think anybody can do comedy. Anybody could take a class, do a couple of shows, like get a few laughs or whatever.
Right.
But
And
when you're talking about top tier, that's where like.
But it's amazing how far you can go if you just take your ego out, because ego, the thing that says I like this joke, it should work, is the thing that tells you, but it's not though, so change something. So what I see a lot of bad comics doing is just spending years doing jokes that they think are funny and not realizing that it's hitting 40% of the time, and you need 90.
Yes.
You need, if the crowd is more than 20 people and you are not starting the show and they all speak English, you should be aiming for 90.
Yeah.
Or more.
Right.
Like, I mean, yes, there are some jokes that are very interesting. You get into like that becomes a thing of artistry of like, this person bombs in this room, but they're so fun to watch when they connect. Right. But like, it's just focus groups. It's, I think it's really cool to me that I was not from an artistic family. I was not from the entertaining people or anyone who encouraged me to be an entertainer. And I think comedy became my interest because it is such an you can approach it so algorithmically.
Sure.
There are also people who have approached it very algorithmically with mathematical backgrounds, and they get laughs, and there's nothing else there, and it's garbage, and it's not art, and it's commerce exclusively. But
it's fun to watch comics that have a very business and scientific approach go up on stage where you're like, yes, that's a well-written joke, but like, you sound like a math teacher.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I appreciate it. Like, I appreciate that you put that much effort into it, but like, not going to show your video to my family.
Right.
You know?
Right. And then maybe I still think ultimately the brain is an algorithm. We talk about math like it's some evil thing. We talk about these processes like your brain is just doing a lot of math on like between every neuron. I don't know how.
Yeah.
I don't know how neuroscience works, but like I don't think there will be no difference between your wet brain and a big enough computer that simulates it. I'm a believer in that we are nothing special in this universe. That there's not really a soul. That this is just our brains seem magical to us because we only exist in them. But I think that everything can be explained with math. I think that you could simulate a brain with enough technology, and you don't need squishy things. You can use cold metal things.
I'm going to push back a little bit.
Cool.
Because I think overall you're right. Mm-hmm. And this has been Existential Crisis Hour with Matt and Corey. I do think computers and math can be a little too rigid for brains in that, like, I don't think brains are connected correctly most of the time. I think 99% of the processes they do like makes sense. Mm-hmm. And like, oh, you have to breathe. Like, okay, that happens at a steady rhythm, or your heartbeat happens at a steady rhythm, and those things are easy to simulate. And it's all math because it's your brain just fitting into mathematically the best thing that's going to keep you alive.
Yeah.
However, and I think this is where math nerds get tripped up when it comes to social interaction, is that human brains don't make logical sense a lot of times. Like, I think like neurons can be connected to each other in a way where like someone who's purely mathematical, or like a computer that's trying to replicate a brain is going to look at that and go like, why the fuck would they do that? And
well,
it's
I
like,
think there's an explanation.
I don't know. It's like something got wired weird when he was a kid, and so now that's just how this person is. Like,
sure,
and
yeah.
so there needs to be a little bit
perfect.
of malleability in these computers.
Yeah,
if we're going to simulate
commit suicide, right? Yeah, which is obviously against the code of our evolutionary development.
Why would that person say that about my weight? It's like, well, they weren't thinking correctly. Like,
I think two things though can corrupt that, which is ego, which I already said. Like, you need to believe you're special. I think if the human mind actually comprehended how useless it is, the consciousness is only developed because things are, I'm special, I'm important, I need to keep going on, I need to spread my seed, right? And which
keeps us alive.
It's an incorrect thought. Ego that you're special is an incorrect thought, and the only reason it's still alive is because if you didn't have that, life wouldn't continue on.
Right.
And then I think speed would be the second factor. We don't want to do math. We don't have time to calculate.
Correct.
This isn't actually a threat to us, or this wasn't about me. And that's why we don't necessarily, that's why we go off instinct, and that's why people make really bad mathematical assessments of things, because they're like, oh, I don't want to, no, this seems like the better option. I'll spend money on this because it's worth it. I'm like, no, you just want to make that easy and just put down your money and buy it. And
right.
I think those two things corrupt it. So I think you could also program a computer to make those mistakes.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think you could. Would it be still considered math then? Or are you just programming an infinite number of mistakes?
Oh, I guess I'm not saying the brain is a perfect mathematical machine. I'm saying all the things that each neuron is affected by its adjacent ones on a purely mathematical process. And if you had enough information, you could predict everything the brain will ever do.
So how do we give a computer psychedelics to really fuck up those neurons? Just really like get those all scrambled.
I thought that's what the dial-up sound was.
Just the computer tripping out. It was the computer logging in, just like hard.
But I'm spiraling out here. I do think it's I think a mathematical understanding of processes isn't this evil thing that we make it out to be. I think algorithms are cool. I think even comedy can be figured out. What I think when you talk about people who are mathematically putting it together and then it works, but it's lackluster, I think they're just not zooming out, being like, okay, these jokes work individually. How do they sound as a set? And then, like, to me, and again, people who are terrible at math can figure these things out. Great artists who find ways of. I think they're just not zooming out, and realizing where's the vulnerability, where's the arc of this, how does this show them, and like, I think ultimately your goal with comedy and entertainment is to make people feel less alone.
Right.
And some people can tell a bunch of good jokes and not accomplish that.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure they get some nerds that are like, that's how I would write a joke.
Yes.
And it's like, you know.
I'm fascinated by that. Like, there's the one thing I've seen in common, and myself included, of people with mathematical backgrounds who get into comedy is a love for puns. And the same with the crowds. When I do engineering schools, there is an appreciation for how puns are put together. Yeah. I don't know what that is. No. I think it's so fascinating that why do mathematicians love puns so much? And why do left brains emotional people hate them? Like, get angry.
My theory for why engineers hate puns.
Hate puns?
No, sorry, love puns.
Yeah.
Engineers love puns is because they know it breaks social norms. They know that it makes other people mad, and so it makes that, like, engineers are awkward. And I've put this together. I've actually thought about this before. After going to an engineering school, all my friends are coders. They all fucking love puns.
Puns, yeah.
They love puns.
Guilty.
I think it's because they like the idea that it's breaking some social norm. It's going to make people groan because it makes them feel, to your point, less alone. Like, if they're doing awkward interactions with people, they're like, oh, I'm so awkward. Why do I keep? And they'd shut themselves in their room. They're like, I'm just going to play League of Legends this week. Like all this, but like a pun. That's something that's just socially acceptable enough, but also super awkward at the same time.
I feel like you're throwing us under the bus with that, man. That's to say we have some active cruelty.
I'm a sadist. I love watching people squirm if I did it on purpose. If I did it on accident, I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I feel bad. Please love me.
I've also witnessed engineers not make the puns, but enjoy the other people's puns. And I think it's...
because they like everyone else around them going, oh
no, I disagree.
Right.
I think it's I think humor is a really difficult thing. It's a very you have to be very in tune with people's emotions. You have to have the status has to be right, the tone has to be right. It takes, I think, a lot of emotional intelligence to pull off good comedy.
Yeah,
a lot of awareness, and those are all things.
I was going to say
lack.
Awareness and intelligence, like you're just putting it together. Yeah.
Whereas I think most engineers find that very inaccessible. They're typically not very funny people. They don't know how to crack a joke in a big room.
Yeah,
and there is a procedure for building puns. It is a process that a computer could eventually figure out. So it's the entry level of jokes.
Okay,
so they'd be like, this makes sense to me. I don't understand all of your sloppy, wet emotions.
Gotcha.
But this joke has a format, and I can explain why it's funny. There's a logical reason that this thing holds dual meaning, and you watch it. That's your A to C.
Yeah.
Two disconnected things that share nothing in common, right? This phrase interpreted one way means something else, means something this, and then another way, if you flip the meaning of two of these words, it means something very different, and that you can see it holds this duality, and you watch it go from A to C, kind of like a seeing eye puzzle.
So why do some people hate it? Why do most people hate them?
Because it lacks, I think, for the emotionally intelligent, the left brain people that I so envy with their ease of understanding.
Don't envy them.
Yeah.
You'd rather be in the middle.
I find myself on the left, just not having that understanding of like, I watch good drama and I'm like, boo, I don't like these emotions that they're so able to express and read. That's the hardest part. I think it's ingenuine. A pun typically represents a lie. You led them there all with the intention of deceiving them. You were trying to tell them one thing, and ultimately you were hiding another meaning. So it's ingenuine. Instead of making people feel less alone, you've made them feel more alone. I was capable of hiding. Same with so this is misdirection and puns are the lowest level of jokes.
Yes.
When you watch open micers, it's the first two things they write because they're easy to write and they get a reaction. Not necessarily a laff, a reaction, but they represent being
open micers
ingenuine.
And some people that have been doing it a long time.
Yeah. And listen, I still do. I'll do a.
They're fun every once in a while.
I use subtle misdirection to open a joke, and then sometimes I'll close the joke with a big misdirection, but like a long joke, and I'll put puns in, but I'll try to kind of underhand them or do them not. So I'm definitely not taking you there just to arrive at a pun, because then it means you've lied to them. And sometimes lying to them is fun. There are good comedians.
Sadist.
Again, that's
what I'm saying. It's the sadism.
I have one joke where I do truly relish the anger at it. But I think for emotionally intelligent people, it represents a lie and it represents a deception.
I like that.
And it's also corny. And there's also the whole thing of the other person's proud of it and they shouldn't be.
Sadism.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
It is
I do agree with you. I do agree with you. I don't think I'm wrong, but I do agree. I do agree with you. I think there's a level of superiority when it comes to social norms. It's the one social interaction where engineers feel like they're on top of it. We're at an hour.
Okay.
Is there anything you wanted to wrap up on? I just like. I mean, I could talk to you forever, but I got a hard rule: an hour, and then you can come back eventually.
Okay. Well. This was scattered and messy, and
unlike
we
a
kind of
math
talked
problem,
about
honestly.
math. Yeah, but I'm glad we closed on the puns thing. Watch 3 Blue 1 Brown, and give math a chance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
It doesn't have to be so painful. It can be very, very fun and very satisfying, just for its own sake. Yeah, that's all I gotta say.
I'm gonna check it out. Where can people find you?
At Monday Punday on all platforms.
Are you still doing like a? You were doing a lot of stuff on Twitter back when I first met you. Are you still on, like, posting a ton of tweets and doing the Monday Punday stuff still?
I haven't posted a Monday Punday in a little while. I got a new batch coming up.
Okay.
Monday Punday are drawings I do, I should clarify. They are pun games. I don't put them in the joke category, but they have elements related to puns. They're an example. Go check that out, mondaypunday.com. It's also an app. It's a picture of a caveman sculpting a vase. You're like, what is this? And the answer is a Harry Potter, and it's on you to solve it. So I have about 500 of those online.
Love it.
And then I stopped tweeting because I kind of OD'd on it during the pandemic. And then I stopped tweeting, and then I got better at stand-up because I stopped. Yeah, I realized that if I had a funny idea, my brain would say, we'll find a tweet version and get the instant satisfaction versus the incredible amount of work, not incredible amount, but just much more laborious process of fine-tuning a stand-up version of it, which would be more valuable.
Good for
but
you.
take longer.
So many people never figure that out.
Yeah, I was like, oh, I'm getting worse at comedy because I tweeted 5 jokes today. I wrote them like, none of these work on stage.
No.
But if you
I try to do it backwards. I try to write a bit, and if I can't get it to work, I'll dissolve it down into a tweet. Good. And it's like, all right, that's a fucking tweet. And then throw it away and never think about it.
But I've been more productive with stand-up since I stopped tweeting.
Okay. Good for you, man.
Thanks. I wanted to be a one-liner comic originally.
I think everybody
really
kind of
did, and the crowds just did not want it from me.
I think everybody kind of tries that on a little bit. Because it seems like it's the easiest, and then you realize it's like very fucking hard.
You have to be pathetic. Or Jeselnik. Those are the only people who can do one line. That's not true. Dion Cole is also like one of the best.
You got Mitch Hedberg. You got like the
Mitch Hedberg's like pitiable though.
Yeah, it's true.
Dimitri Martin's a little dork.
Yeah.
What's his name? Steve Wright.
Yeah.
Is an absolute weirdo. I think there has to be something quirky about you. Jay London. Like you have to be a bit like off. Whereas to me, I was just like a cool 23-year-old. Yeah, bro. You guys like beer and girls? Let's go.
Oh, we could talk about not having enough confidence in ourselves to realize other people don't want us to be nerdy on stage in the next episode.
I'm still guilty of that. All right.
Oh, yeah. Instagram at Monday Punday. Find me at Corey T Comedy on all social media. And if you're in the city, come to Ope, a comedy show in the East Village at Ferns every single Thursday. You're doing it in a couple of weeks.
Hell yeah, January 26th.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Matt, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
A ton of fun.
Thank you so much.